People make more mistakes when getting married than when buying a house or apartment. When we buy a flat, we look at whether it gets sun, whether the neighbors make noise, whether the taxes are reasonable, whether it is a good investment. But when we get married, we don't always make those kinds of assessments. In love, we often rely solely on what we feel, which can lead us to wrong decisions. We let ourselves be carried away by emotions, by that illusion of romantic love, without considering the practical implications of sharing our life with another person. One of the main reasons why we make mistakes is that we tend to choose poorly. Sometimes, we get carried away by emotion without stopping to evaluate whether the person we are with is really compatible. We often think that love can cure all of a relationship's problems, as if it were some kind of miracle medicine. However, the reality is that love, on its own, is not always enough. Sometimes, we get involved with people with serious problems, believing that our love will be able to solve everything. But the truth is that, no matter how strong our feelings are, we will not always be able to change the other person or solve their personal difficulties. Another important reason why we make so many mistakes about love is the number of myths that exist around it. For example, the belief that love will make us happy forever. Happiness is a concept that we must review. It is not something constant. Rather, it is made up of moments of joy that come and go. Happiness is not maintained perpetually, and thinking like this only creates expectations that are not met. This idea of eternal happiness can lead to frustration, to feeling that something is wrong with our relationship when those moments of joy are not permanent. There is a very popular myth about soulmates, the idea that there is a person made to measure for us with whom we must merge and become one. This idea can lead us to lose our autonomy and freedom, causing us to negotiate things that we really do not want to negotiate. Love should not be unconditional or eternal, but rather something that we build together with our partner, with rules and agreements that allow us to live together in a healthy way. Believing in the existence of a soulmate implies the idea that the other person must fit perfectly with us, without conflicts or differences. But this is not realistic. Each of us has our own characteristics, defects, and peculiarities, and it is impossible to find someone who matches us in everything. True love is not about finding a person who is just like us, but about finding someone with whom we can share our lives, respecting our differences, and learning to live with them. Successful relationships require constant work, compromise, and above all, mutual respect. We must understand that each person has their own individuality, and that losing that autonomy in the name of love does not lead to a healthy relationship. Today in the United States, there are more people separated than married, and half of people regret getting married. Only 30% of people are in relationships that really work well. In my experience, half of my patients want to separate, and the other half want to get married, often without being sure if they are ready for it. There is enormous social pressure pushing us to get married, to start a family, as if it were a goal that we must achieve in order to be considered successful. However, we do not always reflect on whether that is really the best decision for us. It is common to see couples complaining about the lack of compatibility with their partner, something that was usually already present from the time they were dating. However, they decided to ignore it because they thought that love could overcome anything. But that is not the case. Love cannot overcome everything. There are things that are simply not compatible, and it is important to be aware of this before making a lifelong commitment. We cannot expect that, because of love, the other person will change radically or that aspects that bother us will disappear. Ignoring the signs during dating, hoping that everything will magically be resolved, is one of the main causes of disappointment and failure in relationships. Many people stay in toxic and unbearable relationships for different reasons. One of them is self-sacrifice. They believe they have an obligation to sacrifice themselves for others, and they take the relationship as a duty. Other people are dependent. They think they cannot live without the other person, which generates a kind of emotional addiction. But that is not love, it is dependence. It is important to learn to differentiate between needing someone and preferring to be with that person. Needing someone implies that without that person we cannot be happy or live fully, while preferring someone means that, although our life would be better with that person, we can also be happy on our own. Attachment binds us when we cannot let go of a bond that makes us suffer unnecessarily. This type of relationship consumes us, drains our energy, and prevents us from growing as individuals. There are two types of suffering: useful suffering and useless suffering. Staying in a relationship that crushes us and makes us unhappy is useless suffering, since it does not lead us to anything positive. In these cases, it is best to opt for useful suffering, such as the grief that comes with a breakup. Even though it is painful, it is a pain that allows us to move forward and grow as people. Grief, although painful, is a necessary process to heal and find our well-being again. It is not about avoiding pain at all costs, but about facing and overcoming pain in a way that allows us to evolve. Going through grief after a breakup is an experience that, although difficult, can help us reconnect with ourselves and better understand what we need and look for in a future relationship. Hope in a toxic relationship can also be harmful. We were taught that hope is the last thing to be lost, but sometimes hope is what keeps us trapped in situations that do us no good. Instead of clinging to hope, we need realism, seeing things as they really are and acting accordingly. It is important to learn to rebel against the irrational beliefs that bind us. Hope in these cases only prolongs suffering and prevents us from making decisions that could improve our lives. We must learn to be brave and recognize when a relationship has no future in order to free ourselves and open ourselves to new opportunities. Love must be reciprocal. If I give affection, I expect affection in return. It is not about tolerating the other person, but rather respecting them. Respect means understanding that the other person has ways of thinking and acting that are different from our own, and accepting those differences. Mutual respect is essential for a healthy relationship. In a relationship based on respect, both partners are aware of their differences and value them rather than trying to change them. This type of respect creates an environment of trust where each person can be authentic and grow without feeling judged or limited. Respect also involves setting clear boundaries and not tolerating behavior that hurts us. It is important to know how to say no and be able to communicate what we need to feel good in the relationship. A healthy relationship is not based on constant sacrifice or putting up with the unbearable, but on mutual support and joint growth. When both people feel valued and respected, it is easier to build a stable and happy relationship. Finally, when we see couples who have been married for 75 years, we often celebrate them as if they are an example of success. But do we really know if they have been happy all that time? Often, what we are celebrating is the ability to endure, not true love. Love should be a source of growth and well-being, not something that is simply endured over the years. Celebrating the length of time a couple has been together should not be more important than celebrating the quality of that relationship. We should ask ourselves whether these couples have been happy, whether they have respected and supported each other, or whether they have simply endured because they believed they had no other choice. True love is not a sacrifice or an obligation, but a daily choice. Choosing someone to share your life with should be based on respect, admiration, and the desire to grow together. Long and healthy relationships are not built simply over time, but through the conscious effort of both people to keep love and respect alive. It is essential to change the narrative about what we consider a successful relationship and start valuing the quality of the bond more than its duration. In conclusion, love is not simply a feeling. It is a construction that requires effort, commitment, respect, and above all, a realistic vision. Getting rid of the myths we have been taught about love will allow us to have healthier and more satisfying relationships. We must be able to question our beliefs, recognize when something is not working, and have the courage to make difficult decisions, but necessary for our well-being. Love should be a source of happiness and growth, and never a burden that prevents us from living fully.